I want to talk a little bit about sales. Sales and growth, and what things you do to attract new clients to it.
Yeah, so it really has been a big investment in our own marketing. So about 4 years ago, we brought in a salesperson who really changed the way we think about our own digital marketing, and he helped us really evolve and actually use our own services on ourselves. And we've had another person who has taken over their mantle as they left the organization. And her name's Alicia, and she has done like an amazing job to become our like brand advocate and manager, and really has evolved our website. So we've updated our website here recently. We do pay-per-click. We do a lot of content. And then, so really invested in all the things we recommend to our partners. It'd be kind of silly to recommend those things if we're not doing them ourselves. And then the last one is doing some connections to other marketing agencies and other businesses. I think that's a big place where you get leads and get connections. And it's amazing how many more of the leads closed when somebody has connected you versus somebody who's filled out a contact form, right? Like there's that additional level of trust that you gain from that. So that's also been a big driver for our growth over the last couple of years as well.
We've talked about how I think it almost feels like it was your destiny to be a business owner, but you have had the opportunity of working the job for other people as well as being a business owner. So I wonder if you could share some of what you see as the benefits of being a business owner compared to your other experiences.
Yeah, I think for me personally, so one of the things that is really rewarding for me is like helping other people grow and learn. And that's kind of part of my own DNA. And so as a business owner, I've had much more control over helping my team grow, learn, become better, reading books together, providing opportunities for people to become managers, to learn new things. So I think like sitting back and watching that has really fed who I am. More so than as an employee, you don't have as much control over those things, and you don't have control over whether. So, like I said, we do put a good amount of time into like non-billable items to help our team become better. So having that, it was big. Creating my own schedule is obviously nice as a business owner. It's allowed me to spend more time with my family. I've got a 1, 3, and 5-year-old. And a dog who you've probably heard whining. So like spending more time with the family is nice. And I think probably the last one, it's really, so I have an MBA also that I got from Willamette University, kind of in the middle there of after I graduated from PSU. And owning my own business has really like allowed me to continue growing and learning and applying a lot of the things I learned at that MBA. And that's also been a big, I feel like now I have like a PhD in business management that I could have went and invested, a couple $100,000 more and got a PhD somewhere. But I feel like, I've already received a lot of those learnings from on the job of starting a business from scratch out of a bedroom, and now, having a 15-person company with an office in Southeast Portland, and that's, it's grown into what it is. And so that's been amazing to continue my own education and learning too, which I wouldn't have been able to do just as normally, like as an employee.
But we have to ask, being who we are, about your accounting and finance function. How do you actually do that, and maybe how has it evolved over time with your business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we use QuickBooks. We do our books on a cash basis. We do have an accounting firm that helps us with some of our planning and tax prep. But we do all of our bookkeeping in-house currently still. And I'd say probably some of the biggest changes that we've made. So at the beginning, and again, when like Dan came on, my operations director, it was pretty basic in our reporting. We looked at maybe a P&L, and that's about it. And since then, we've really invested into a lot of forecasting. We do a lot more planning. We look at our cash flow at a much more deeper level. And all of those things have allowed us to maybe sidestep a pothole here or there, and has really helped us reduce some of the potential problems we had with cash flow in the past. And he single-handedly has taken a business where we were surviving, but we were like paycheck to paycheck, as I like to say, as a business, to where we're able to really be in a really great place financially today. Well, maybe not today, but prior coming into COVID-19, that has allowed us to like survive in the first 2 months so far. And without those right practices, forecasting and modeling that we had, like we would have, like many other businesses, had to shut down or make massive employee reductions, which I've seen a lot of my friends having to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate kind of some of the detail in that discussion, because that's what we've seen in terms of our contacts, is that companies that we're already doing forecasting and modeling, we're in a good place to jump in and revise those or do some additional planning related to the COVID-19 crisis. And others who maybe didn't have a process for doing that, it's just that much more effort, right? Because now you feel like you need to do it, but you're having to start from scratch because you've never done it before. So yeah, I think I think that's a great call out for businesses that, if you have this in place, it did make it easier for a lot of businesses to jump in and do planning with a little more confidence right away.
And it helped make it like our PPP applications and grants that we've had to, like, all that was much easier than if we had to recreate all that on the fly.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I think one of another follow-up question I have for you on this is that, having been through that journey, what we often see, or what I often see, is that companies don't usually start right out of the gate with doing a lot of cash flow planning and modeling. They get to a certain point in their business where they realize, oh, okay, we need to start doing this. And so that's the typical kind of learning curve in terms of that I've seen. If you were advising other businesses on this point, is there a point of time, or how do you see it? At what point should a business start kind of really doing their cash flow planning and modeling in the way that you do now?
Yeah, I would say, if you can, don't wait for the oh shit moment. Cause that's really where we landed, is we had the oh shit moment, and okay, we recovered from that, but now let's make sure that never happens again.
Right.
And I think COVID-19 is going to be the oh shit moment and I hope that we can say shit on this, but sorry,
yes. Yeah.
you have to edit that out.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the moment for many businesses. And I think that for the ones that survive, they're going to fully see that they need to make changes to their practices for the future, so that when the next, COVID, housing crisis, whatever it is, hits, right? Because they're all cycles. It's not an if this is going to happen again, it's a when. You're in a much better and safer, protected place, so that hopefully a business can continue to operate. The businesses that make it out of this are going to have less competition. They're going to, because there are organizations that are closing, that are shut down. We've had some of our partners have had to close, like go bankrupt because of this, which is it's terrible. I mean, I feel terrible about it. But it was just the bad timing in terms of where they were at financially when all this started. So do it sooner than you think you need to, and it's a worthy investment to make.
Yeah. No, I think I appreciate that. I appreciate those points. And, speaking of the COVID-19 crisis and its effect on the business, we've already talked about a few of these things. You mentioned earlier, the team's all working from home now. You're actively doing things to keep people connected because people are working from home. And on the financial side, it's really emphasized the importance of modeling and scenario planning. And then you just started talking a little bit about expectations and what you're kind of seeing in terms of the competitive environment. I wonder if there's anything more that you might tell us about how you see the crisis affecting the business, and understanding that we're all just pretty much speculating to some extent too, because sitting at the date that we are now, we're in Oregon where we're closed. The economy is essentially closed, and we don't know exactly when the economy is going to open yet.
Yeah. I mean, you could put some ideas up on a dartboard and throw a dart, and that's probably more accurate. But, I think, what is going to happen. I mean, a lot of businesses have lost revenue. This is going to be a down year from a revenue and profitability standpoint for many businesses. And so to me, it's the businesses that decide to plan and start trying to grow and recover sooner are going to have are going to be able to actually achieve that sooner. To me, I'm all about and believe in planning being a huge leading factor in whether you're successful or not. And so this, as soon as you can kind of pivot out of the fear and concern that we're currently in and start thinking about positively about the future and planning for that, I think the better. Our team is already starting to think about, okay, how can we market coming, in a recession? How can we market as we come into a early recovery, and how do our services need to change? Because the services we provided 6 months ago have to be different than what they are today. They have to move faster. They have to, come at live faster, because we can't wait 2 months potentially for a PPC account to go live. Businesses need revenue and traffic today. And so we've pivoted and moved a lot of our services to be more fast acting. Now that might mean for us specifically, that means there's less strategy that we're putting into up front, but we believe that's a worthy, what's the right word? It's worth giving up some of the strategy with the ability to capture more leads and revenue for our clients more quickly. Mm-hmm. So it's a good trade-off. That's a good word. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's just planning and focusing on how we can make this better for our partners sooner.
Well, I guess we don't know exactly what the world's going to look like 12 months from now, but if you were thinking about in your scenario planning, the scenario that the economy opens back up this summer, things start rebounding, what does that scenario look like for you if you go out 12 months? Where's the company 12 months from now?
Oh yeah. So my genuine hope is that we've obviously recovered all of our lost revenue. We're definitely have had our worst month ever in April from a revenue decline, not overall revenue obviously, but profitability. It's been a very difficult month. So my hope is that we've obviously kind of recovered from the impact that these last 2 months have had, and that we've pivoted into back to our growth, which we've grown every single year since we've been in operation. And so it's going to be really hard to do that this year, I think. But setting basically a new base year and continuing to try to grow our revenues and people and services going forward. It's going to be a different market in 12 months from now. And, just, I know that the team that I have is going to be able to evolve and grow through that, which is awesome. I have no fears or concerns about my team or how we're going to make it through. I know we're going to. We've been through other really hard things as a team, and this is just another challenge to figure out and to grow through.
So as we get near wrapping up the show today, I always kind of throw out there: is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
If you're talking about digital marketing, things that I sometimes like, does digital marketing actually work? And I think if you find the right firm and you have the right mindset of budget and investment, right? Like, you can't turn something on and you're immediately going to be ROI positive. Like, it takes some time to learn about, whatever specific market you're in, and kind of maybe catch up to competitors who had been investing in digital. But yes, digital marketing definitely works. I also hear a lot, like, what should I look for when I'm choosing an agency potentially, or a consultant even? And the thing I always point people towards are what are like those third party points, right? So like, you got to look at their reviews. You got to look at, are they getting awards? Look at their website. So obviously you have a little bit more control over your website. But if a marketing agency has a crappy website, or if they're not doing the things that they recommend you do, that's a little bit concerning. And so, yeah, I think those are some of the things you can go look and just type in like your digital marketing agency's name, reviews, and there'll be a whole page of, from Glassdoor to Yelp to, Angie's List, Google. See what people are saying about their services, see what people are saying about their team. And I think that is a huge way that you can help sort out the bad digital companies. Because unfortunately, there are still a lot of companies that give digital marketing a bad name. And looking at those types of searches, right? So their name and reviews will help you at least remove the bad ones off of your potential list. Yeah.
And if somebody wants to get in touch with you or the company to hear more about your services, should they go to your website? Is that the best way to contact you guys?
Yeah, I think our website's great. So just intuitivedigital.com is where you can find us. You can learn more about our services and the types of partners that we like to work with. And from there, you can just either give us a call or fill out a contact form, and it's me. I'll be getting back to you. So I look forward to hopefully hearing from any of you soon.
That's great. And we'll put that website link down in the comments below.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for joining us for today's episode. And we wish you the best of luck, and maybe we'll be able to check back in with you at a later time to see how things are going with the business.
I so appreciate the time, and I enjoyed the interview. So thank you. And we'll be talking to you again soon.
All right. Okay. See everybody.
Bye.
I found a article this week that was actually talking about something similar. So for those who don't know, CPA firms are often niched. So this article was by Sean Stein Smith, actually, in Forbes. And the title of it is "What Your CPA Really Know About Blockchain." And so he goes through and kind of talks about if you have blockchain, if you're getting audited for blockchain, if you're a business that's attempting to go in or use blockchain or leverage blockchain for payments, or even a side investment in Bitcoin for individuals, the kind of questions you should be asking your CPA about blockchain. And I don't necessarily want it to be a conversation about blockchain, which we can have one, of course, if you guys are interested in that. But really, I thought the article was good in any sense. You can replace blockchain here with any other kind of word or association. So if you're in the business of government, if you're a governmental agency and you have to have an audit, who were the outside CPA firms? What should they know about governmental auditing? What should they know about, you fill in the blank if you're in a niche kind of thing. And so he kind of goes through what he thinks what you should be asking about in a prospective CPA firm. And so basically he's asking, is the firm representing itself as offering blockchain advisory and what that looks like, getting an idea of what you're going to receive in turn for the money you're going to pay to the CPA firm. And then also asking about, their educational background or continuing educational background and how much they are and how many current kind of professionals they have in the office that are dedicated to this type of work. And so it also gets into the fact that blockchain is becoming more relevant and that probably accountants across the board are at least going to have to become a little bit familiar with how it works, how how a control system around blockchain works. Does it have authorizations or non-authorizations? So basically it's like installing a new payment method and having controls around it and being able to articulate those and have an architecture around those that would be just, not only good for the business and their control structure, but auditable by an outside firm, or have the information available to be able to give to somebody for them to trace transactions through it. So I just thought I'd get your guys' kind of take if Bitcoin has hit your guys' kind of radar, or if you've had any experience working with it, or if you think maybe he missed a point, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't had any experience directly working with it. It's something that I've always kind of, it's something that's been discussed a lot, but that we never took initiative to do much about. But I can speak to just the idea of having accounting be one of the fields where you end up having to know a little bit about a lot of things, because in order to effectively account for any of the transactions or audit your own work, you have to kind of have a feeling for what's going on behind the scenes. And so, yeah, I think it does make a lot of sense that accountants would need to study up on blockchain technology to an extent so that they can understand how the workflow is supposed to look and how they can improve it. And it's a very complicated thing that is always changing. And yeah, I think there's just always more to learn in fields that you might not think you would be discussing, as working as an accountant. What do you think, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably still early to say that that's something that all accountants need to know about. I think that the two kind of obvious use cases are if you are going to be doing advisory with clients that have blockchain technology implemented in some way, or utilizing or affected by blockchain technology in some way. Of course, if you're advising in the blockchain space, you got to know about it, right? I mean, I think that's a that would be common sense on that front. I think probably where firms or accountants may get caught short is the secondary use case, is if you are on the assurance or audit side and you're auditing businesses or companies that are affected by it, and you may not realize that until you're already kind of knee deep in working in the audit and realizing, oh crap, this company has blockchain technology somehow affecting its controls or its transaction flow or whatever, and I don't understand it. That might be a problem for you, if you're dealing kind of in the audit space. I think, for what the kind of work that we do at TCA on more the CFO advisory and outsourced accounting space, I mean, we kind of control whether it comes up or not. We either accept or don't accept a client that's affected by it. And it's not universally the case right now that all clients are directly impacted by it in a way that we need to know that much about it. And so I think that you can say, well, it's an emerging technology that seems to be kind of the future, one of those technologies that will permeate a lot of different things. And so, yeah, maybe that will be the case in the future, that all accountants would need to know something about it. And so definitely something we're keeping our eye on. But I would say as of today, I don't see that's necessarily the case.
I'm wondering how many of our listeners, maybe they can leave in the comment, that are tax preparers or in the tax kind of realm, got more blockchain questions this year than they ever have in the past, just because it was a required now question on the 1040, where you actually had to say whether or not you had any kind of cryptocurrency transactions. So, and I'm just wondering, if, I guess, a baseline understanding of what that means is at least necessary when you're doing those kind of tax returns. So I thought that was the thought that came up to me was, kind of our friends working in the tax kind of realm.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what you just said highlighted a point for me that I think is kind of leads towards, we're sooner or later we may need to know more about it, is that, blockchain and cryptocurrency are not synonymous. Cryptocurrencies are built on blockchain technology, but blockchain technology has a prevalence that is more broader than just in the cryptocurrency world. And so I think when I think about, when I was mentioning earlier that maybe audit firms may get caught short, it may be that they're working with a client that it has nothing to do with cryptocurrency, but somehow blockchain technology is deployed in a process or in something that they're dealing with that they would have to understand it in some way. And so I think that's a good call out, is to not, I would say to our colleagues out there, don't assume that if there's no cryptocurrency, that means there's no blockchain, because there could still be blockchain technology to consider, even if there's not cryptocurrency. On the flip side, from a tax standpoint, I've reviewed some of the tax rules and issues regarding cryptocurrency in the past, and even written 2 years ago articles on what the IRS was thinking back then in terms of the taxation of cryptocurrency. And so from my perspective, you can abstract the tax treatment of a cryptocurrency without knowing anything about blockchain technology. That would be me. I don't know anything about how blockchain works, but I did know at one point, it's gone out of my head now, but I did know at one point how the taxation of cryptocurrency was designed to work. So I'd say the topics are not necessarily really that intertwined, especially from just a pure how do you tax a cryptocurrency standpoint.
All right. Let's see, the next one I have, let me get away from tax for a second. I thought this is an interesting one I wanted to get your guys' opinion on. So the article itself comes from Accounting Today, and it deals with one of the big four. PricewaterhouseCoopers has developed a contract tracing app for coronavirus and looks to reopen offices using that contact tracing app. So PETA, it's basically a long article on basically the technology that they have, but how it works is you have an app on your phone that you use to, like, I guess it's the PwC's like time tracking staff. Anyway, you log into this thing and you have your phone, supposedly you have your phone on you all day, and it like registers where you're at all day and then sends notifications if somebody comes in sick. Thank you. And so as this happens, you're basically accounted for every moment in the day of where you're at, who you're with, and what you're doing. And they're saying that it's only going to be used for tracking for tracking coronavirus and contact tracing. But I'm wondering if that then moves into an HR department or an invasion of privacy or micromanagement kind of, where your whereabouts are known 24/7 while you're at work at least. And if that thing turns off when you're at home.
Yeah, well, especially now with everybody working from home, I can totally imagine a business trying to misuse that technology to keep tabs on where their employees are. And so, yeah, I think it's a very astute concern. But at the same time, I think it's also really interesting to try to think about how technology or an app can assist in any way during a pandemic, and how there are maybe some kind of interesting, utilizations of that technology that you might not think about at first glance. And so, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, but yeah, I hope it doesn't, turn into this sort of draconian watch where I'm going all day kind of a deal via my app that you said would protect me from coronavirus,
Well, I mean, it is when you think about it from the standpoint of a large audit firm like PwC, a big four accounting firm that does a lot of audit, I should say, like PwC, it does have interesting possible applications, right? Like, they're already charging the time, as AJ pointed out, and so if employees are charging time to an inventory observation, for example, but you can tell from the app that whether they're actually on site looking at inventory or not, that kind of opens all new possibilities for how different data can be tracked and reconciled to each other to really to really monitor and like you said, micromanage people more. And I think it makes sense in this country that this is the direction that it might go, because I'd heard about these tracking apps, and the discussion that I heard previously is governments using them, and how that could be kind of an invasion of privacy and against our constitutional rights and things like that. But it's like, oh yeah, but it's not the government that even has to do it. It's just our employers. Like, and you say if PwC does this, other big four firms do this. Pretty soon, other big employers like Amazon or Google and things could be doing this kind of thing too. And so, yeah, it does. Yeah, that it is interesting to say, okay, is that an unfortunate possible outcome of this coronavirus crisis? Is that employers are starting to do some things that we wouldn't have thought would be reasonable before.
What if they're not even what if they are, because the article does talk about where their intent is that all this information goes back and gets autonomized and then kind of gets, you're a number, not a name, and gets condensed, and so they can track it all. But I'm wondering, even from a perspective of an employee, right? Like using Ty's example, you're supposed to be on an inventory observation. Well, instead of going on the inventory observation for 4 hours, you finish an hour early, and all you and your team go to a bar. But you say you work there for 4 hours. Well, do you just leave your phone at the inventory observation? And then does that defeat the whole contact tracing purpose because you're trying to get one over on being tracked? I don't know if it like blows up in everybody's face,
Sure. Yeah. For any system, there will be a workaround, of course. Yes.
Well, and I can't wait for the company that develops either some kind of proxy or some kind of device that you can use to game the system by leaving it in a good place to work and then going to the fun places on your own. I'm going to start that idea, and you guys can buy it on my Kickstarter later this year.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Hiring somebody to have your phone in the place where you should be,
Totally. Totally. There you go. There's always another level to it. Anytime somebody's trying to do something to you, you just got to outsmart them one more level. So yeah, kind of an interesting article that I've got that's on the same topic is from Bloomberg. 3 hours longer, the pandemic workday has obliterated work-life balance. And so we were just kind of talking about different controls that a company could take to monitor their employees. This article talks about how they've taken a survey of people who have been working from home and to get their feel for whether or not it was all that it was cracked up to be. And what they're finding is that in the people that they surveyed, they found that they were working an extra 3 hours a day. They found that they felt like their work-life balance was gone because they felt like they didn't have an excuse to be away from the computer, and that even when people had even when people could do what they wanted to do, they felt that nagging guilt of feeling like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do at work. And so I think it's interesting to see how people will self-police and will, basically hold themselves to a standard when at home, in an attempt to try to just keep their work life, to basically keep up with their work and make it look like they're doing something. And so I'm kind of curious whether or not you guys have had this feeling at all of like, I'm at home, but I know that I should be working. And so I can't quite shut it off kind of a deal.
Well, I think, yeah, I think a couple thoughts. One is that, yeah, I mean, if you're working at home and that's also where you live and recreate and whatever, you don't have those dividing lines that you previously had. Right. And so it makes it easy to just keep working. Right. But I think this is interesting because I was doing some independent research on my own on a somewhat related topic, but people who know me know that I'm obsessive about my calendar. My wife makes fun of me because I'll spend hours on the weekend, like going through my calendar and meticulously like scheduling everything down to this is the amount of time I'm going to sleep. And this is the time I'm going to take a shower. And this is how much I'm going to, all of that. Right. And so the question that I'd had in my mind kind of related to this topic was, what's a normal amount of downtime? So if what is the normal amount of downtime? And I also, I am a big fan of the historical Benjamin Franklin and his, productivity and the, very like well known for his productivity and also the being somewhat eccentric and or being that Renaissance man and just being involved in a lot of different things, which is something that I maybe not to my benefit, I've been victim of or done as well. And so what I did was I was Googling kind of research and articles on what other people were saying about how much downtime would be normal. And what I found a couple of different articles that basically were concluding through some research done, and this was totally unrelated to coronavirus. This was old news, right? And they were concluding, maybe like 4 or 5 hours a day of downtime is healthy for you, something of that nature. And I was like, man, I don't know if I get 4 or 5 hours a day. So I brought up Benjamin Franklin because I thought, well, Benjamin Franklin famously published his daily routine. And so you can go see like what his daily routine was. And so I went to see what his daily routine was. And sure enough, he's got some blocks of time that say things like figuring out your daily constitutional and deciding what good you'll do for the day and meditating on blah, 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 right? So you kind of have to read between the lines, but I kind of interpreted Benjamin Franklin's schedule to actually result in about 4 to 5 hours of downtime a day. So that was kind of an interesting result. So anyway, I in the process of doing all of that, I was looking at articles, again, written before COVID-19 issues about remote working versus working in the company or working on site in the office. And one of the points that's making that really resonated with me, that one of the articles was making, was that there was some research that said, well, people who work like an 8-hour day in the office, the truth is that their actual productivity is 3 to 4 hours a day on average. And their conclusion on that, now I don't know if that number is outrageous or right or outrageous or anything, but to get to that number, that idea, what they were talking about is, well, when you're working on site in the company, you've got a lot of time talking to colleagues, you've got a lot of time speculating about things, you've got a lot of interruptions and things that occur during your day. You might leave for lunch and come back. And so there's a lot of that kind of stuff that really detracts from your downtime. And what they were pointing out is that, if you're if you're working remotely and you're not talking with colleagues and you're just focused in on getting the work done throughout that day, if you actually do that for an 8-hour day, you're just focused from beginning to end of an 8-hour day, you're doing more work than the average in-office worker, right? And so I think that relates to this particular point, right? Which is that being at home and in our home offices and not having that, the interaction and the loss of time that comes, there's a lot of benefits from collaboration and human interaction. And that's why we do it, right? But there is overhead to it as well. And I think that with that overhead being gone, there's probably, a lot of us probably are actually working and having to focus or just focusing for more hours than we normally would have if we were in the office, because we don't have the distractions and the overhead of collaborating with other people going on as much.
Yeah, and I do have to mention that actually the article did bring up that productivity was actually up in the companies that they looked at, that people were reporting that same thing that you're finding, that they had more, less distraction and that sort of thing. And then there was a couple of other interesting points, is like I saw in the article that Starbucks was giving their corporate employees 20 free therapy sessions to try to help them cope with the idea of being at home. And I'm not quite, it must be a telesession of some sort. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but yeah, I just thought that was another interesting approach to solving that problem, is we're going to give out therapy until everybody feels better about what's happening to them, sort of a thing. So
I can speak from personal experience. Even though we're a remote office, before the pandemic broke out, even though we are a remote office, I was meeting with clients. That takes time. You got to drive there, drive back. You face-to-face meeting, take notes. Then, you're not going to stay at their office and work. You would come back to wherever your home base is and then do some more work there. You would stop to have a phone call or something like that, or go talk to another client or a prospective client or something like that. And so with the pandemic and sheltering in place, no longer is there that drive time to go to that office. You meet on a Zoom call, and essentially you're taking back an hour of your day. Now, does that mean you just, debit, free time, credit your work time? No, not necessarily, because now I'm feeling like I'm more in front of my computer and I'm seeing all the things that need to be done more often. And I'm thinking about things for 8 hours at a clip, where before it was kind of broken up into sections of you're forced to work on something for X amount of hours, put it down and go meet with somebody, and you have this downtime in between. And then you come back and start working on either the same thing you were working before with a fresh set of eyes, and you kind of get that done. Now what you're doing is you're taking out those small breaks, I guess, in between where your mind it kind of resets and you're kind of thinking about the problem but not executing on it. Instead, you're kind of in execution mode the whole time. And I found myself not getting distracted, but getting very ground out and having to take a stop and like walk away, kind of take your own mental break from it. But I don't know if I'm different, and I maybe get your guys' opinion on it. I'm kind of working, and my wife used to laugh at me so much because I'd be sitting on a couch and she would ask what I would be doing. And I'm like, I'm writing a paper. And she would laugh at me. What do you mean you're writing a paper? This was when I was in school. Well, I'm constantly thinking about what I want to say and how I want to frame it. And I've looked at some of the research and I'm trying to pull it all together in my head of how I want to attack this problem. So even when I'm not working, like client work is kind of always on my mind anyway. It has a way of sneaking in and I'm like, oh, I got it. Or, you know what I mean? Or thinking about how tomorrow I'm going to tackle it like this, or, oh, that was a problem today. How can I fix it tomorrow? Or I ran into this roadblock. So I guess like a clear distinction, and in the accounting world, we use billable hours, my billable hours. And then there's like the time that I'm spending thinking and like going through what to be done about the clients and the problems that are available. So I guess even when I was in an office setting, I was still doing that to a certain extent, but there was much more time to kind of get away from that. Like, oh, I'm out of the office. I can drive home and listen to music or a podcast. Or, oh, I got home. I can eat dinner, talk to the wife, maybe play like 30 minutes of games and see what it is. But the thought is always still there, I think. So I don't know. I'd kind of like to get your guys' take on it.
Oh, totally. I mean, I can't stop thinking about work most of the time that I'm away. And none of these kind of equations we're talking about here take into account how often our significant other has to listen to us ramble on about work, because I can tell you that my wife gets sick of hearing about my work problems. She has zero interest in accounting, and yet she knows absolutely everything there is to know about it, because I can't stop talking about it when I'm away from it. And so I just want to say I live your truth on that, and I haven't found the answer to it yet. Nothing really shuts off the circus, so to speak. So I hope Ty has something good he can share.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different thoughts. One of the things that you were expressing, which is exactly my thought too, is that we're gaining time in our day because of the lack of commuting and the lack of setup and cleanup or setup and wrap up of various meetings and things that we might do throughout our day in the office. And so I think the big philosophical question then is who should that time accrue to, right? I mean, does that time accrue to us does that give us more free time? And probably what's actually happening is it's not. I think probably some of the phenomena that we're all experiencing where we feel like we're actually working more now that we're working from home is that all of where we're gaining efficiencies, we're just letting that time accrue to doing more work. And I think, and that becomes kind of I think that becomes a default thing for people, especially for people who are highly motivated and very goal oriented and want to achieve their objectives, right? I think that's a natural direction for something like that to happen. So, I mean, you want to kind of watch that in the sense of, that's what I would say is the benefit, I talked earlier about how I'm a little bit crazy about my calendar, but what I would point out is that it really benefits me in this kind of situation, because before COVID-19, I had my playtime versus my work time scheduled. And after COVID-19 and this crisis, I still do. So I know, there's an hour that I'm going to go out and garden, and that's going to happen. And I'm not going to let that hour get invaded by work that I have to do, kind of thing. And so I've worked that out in my calendar. And I think if you don't have the habit of working that stuff out in your calendar ahead of time, otherwise, then you don't have that tool in your tool belt when this is going on, right? That's very similar to like what we talk about with our companies. I was doing an interview the other day with a digital agency and talking about their business, and they were talking about how thankful they were that they had already started the process in their business of doing modeling and forecasting before COVID-19 hit. Because once COVID-19 hit, and you had to sit down and do scenario analysis and ask, what's going to happen if sales don't come in the way we expect? What's going to happen if customers don't pay us on time? How many people can we keep on staff? Who would we have to lay off if we do or don't get the PPP, and so on, right? Going through that kind of modeling was infinitely easier for companies and businesses that already were doing that kind of modeling ahead of time, right? They were doing it before COVID-19. And so they had a framework to do it once this crisis hit. And maybe it's a stretch to relate that, but it just occurred to me that that's kind of the same thing with this calendaring thing, right? In our own personal lives and how we run our lives, if we were already kind of calendaring and thinking about being mindful of how are we spending our lives? How much time are we spending in our lives on work versus with our families versus just doing our hobbies or whatever it is we want to do with ourselves? Being mindful about that. If we were mindful about that before the crisis, I think it probably helped us. It's probably helping those of us who were mindful about that before the crisis be mindful of that during the crisis, right? And if we weren't mindful about it before the crisis, then we're probably suffering a little bit more from slippage of activities kind of taking over more than we'd want it to, because of we don't have the kind of triggers like we change location to tell us that we should be doing something else. And so the other point on that is that I think that AJ was talking about, and Charlie mentioned it too, about thinking about work when we're not at work. That's not unique to the working at home or the COVID-19 crisis. That's been with us. And one of the aspects of being a human being is we kind of have these background processes going on, where when we take on a job, I think something as information workers and people with responsibility that we have to always acknowledge is when we take on a role, there's the hours we work, but there's also the mental weight of carrying that responsibility that is independent of the exact hours, because you can't just shut it off, right? You've taken on a role and a responsibility, and I know Charlie knows this from the roles that he's had. You take on that role and that responsibility, and you get to the end of the day, and it's like, okay, it's not on my schedule to work any more hours today, so I'm going to leave. I'm going to go home and be with my family. But as hard as you try, you can't get rid of the background processes, the weight that you're carrying on that. And so just kind of a side thought for everyone out there working is when you go to negotiate your compensation, you think about what you actually earn for the role that you are. Ask yourself, are you actually making enough to cover that? Are you making enough to cover not only the exact hours that you're working, right, but also the weight that you're carrying? Because a lot of us, it's not like we're working in 1930s manufacturing where we just, produce a widget for a certain number of hours a day and then go home and don't think about it. The roles and the work that we do cause us to always have that background process. And to wrap my ranting up on this, back to the point about us being, how does that relate to us working at home? Well, I think the relationship is those background processes, we probably were using change of location and the fact that we were leaving the office and coming home as one of the ways we kind of contained those background processes. And I think that maybe a lot of us are suffering from that not being there anymore. That even if we stop working because we haven't changed our physical location, it's harder for us to keep those processes in the background where they belong while we do other things. So back to you.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in right when you were talking about the calendar. I was wondering, Ty, have you always been like a scheduler like that? Or is that like a skill you learned and kind of like honed? Because for me, right, like I feel like I'm pretty good like scheduler as far as like mapping. I don't go to the calendar and map out every hour of the day like you do, but I think I have a pretty good grasp of like bracketing time. And I'm trying to get better about, scheduling my day, I guess, in those chunks, instead of doing it mentally, putting it to paper. But it's like lifting weights. The guy that squats 1,000 pounds didn't just squat 1,000 pounds the first time he tried it. It's kind of, and this is more mental, I think, and kind of procedural, where you kind of work up to having every minute of your day scheduled. So I'm just wondering if that was like inherent to your personality, or is that like a skill that you honed over time?
Yeah, it wasn't. It is a skill that I developed, and I think it came about as a result, almost as a kind of a midlife a realization of, hey, if I'm not careful, I'm going to get to the end of my life and not have spent the time the way I want to spend it. And so I think it's the gradual, and I think all of us have experienced this in some way, that gradual, you keep on taking more and more responsibility from the start of your career, your professional life. And for me, my professional life started when I was maybe 25 or so. And so, as I kept taking more and more responsibility over time, it starts filling up more and more of your time. And there's more people demanding time on your schedule. It's not just you, right? Early on in your career and your life, you're able to you're scheduling time, and you have blocks of time where you're supposed to work, but maybe you're not carrying as much of a mental load outside of those times that you're at work. You actually are able to go home and be done with it, right? And over time, a lot of us in the information world and the information workers, as I've called it before, we're gaining more and more responsibility, where more of our time is being more, there's more demands on our time, more people kind of wanting to schedule part of our time. And I think I just came to a realization at one point. I was always a list maker, so I was always, very, very cautious of trying to keep track of, here's the things I have to do and crossing them off my list. But I think I did get to a point where I realized I'm not running my schedule or my life. My schedule is running me. And I don't think everyone has that realization, but I had that realization, and I don't think I coined this term, but I think I've heard it before, that phrase that, run your schedule or your schedule will run you. And I really felt that. I think I got to a point, my mid or late 30s, where I realized that's exactly what was happening. My schedule was running me instead of the other way around. And so I just wasn't going to let that happen. I decided I was going to take charge of that from that point forward.
Yeah, I had this similar kind of experience too, where I used to just do everything by the cuff and do what I needed to do. As far as even in work, I would try to just deal with tasks as they came up. And then I would constantly have this feeling of feeling guilty for not doing something else that I should have been doing or that I thought I should do. And when you look at things in terms of the timeline from when you first were made aware of some problem versus when you thought you were going to fix it, a lot of times a week it sounds like a long time. So you think you can fix a problem in a week or whatever, until you sit down and start putting all of the issues onto a calendar and really seeing how they stack up or acknowledging how long they're going to take. And I think for me, that was like the breakthrough that caused me to then start using the calendar more, because it was like, you know what, I'm not going to feel guilty about things. I'm going to put things in a plan, and then I'm going to adhere to that plan. And then everything else, you can critique the plan, but once it's in place, it's there. And so the other person I've heard that's famous for doing this is that I've heard Elon Musk splits his day into 5-minute increments. And then he plans like a week or two. I don't know how far in advance, but I mean, he plans significantly in advance. And so I think that takes it to an extreme, but I think it's the same overall intuition, which is just that I want to have a plan and I want it to be clear, and I don't want to feel any kind of way about anything that's on the plan, because we all saw it. We all knew, everyone who's a stakeholder in these issues knew what the workload looked like. And I think once I did that, things have felt a lot better. But yeah, like you said, it's hard to shut it off, and yeah, sometimes isn't a substitute for, feeling better about it, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. That's such a great way of discussing it, because what you, I think, hit on that I didn't hit on earlier is that this kind of calendaring and thought process allows you to own your priorities, right? It's what you said, the plan, recognizing that for a lot of us, the the number of things there's an endless number of things we could do, right? And there's a lot of opportunity. There's, it's weird to say right now because a lot of people are so scared with the economy and the coronavirus crisis. But what I've seen in my career is there's actually more opportunity than I have time to take advantage of. And so it's not a question of do I have enough opportunity? It's a question of am I going to plan and take advantage of the opportunities that I want to in a mindful way or not, right? And I think that plays into schedule. So it's so entrenched in schedule, right? Because of exactly what Charlie said. You're gonna, if you just kind of set out to do whatever comes your way, and then you start feeling guilty because you're not getting things done or you're not taking advantage of the opportunities that you wanted to. And if you kind of do more scheduling ahead of time, you have a chance to kind of sit there and look at it and recognize the trade-offs you're making. Realize that you've cut some things off the table, that there's no way that you can do it all this week. So you've already decided ahead of time that you're going to disappoint somebody and that you're not going to take advantage of some kind of opportunity, and that, but you're also going to finish certain things that week. And you've made those choices. And then when you get it, I think for me, and it sounds similar for Charlie, is that it gives you more peace of mind. You get into the execution stage, you don't have as much anxiety about the fact that maybe you're disappointing somebody that week because you already knew you were going to when you planned the calendar out earlier, right? You may not have told them you were going to, but you kind of already knew you weren't going to be able to do what they wanted you to do that week because it just wasn't going to fit.
I mean, I took it because it was that exact thing. And I took it to the extreme in the sense that I wanted the plan to be prioritized. And then I didn't want to be overwhelmed by the amount of things that there were. So I wrote a specific thing that was designed to take my to-do list and make the first task be full screen so that you don't see anything else. And so I hit a button, I'm immersed in that task, and nothing else but the task exists until the task is gone. And that's the only way that I found to kind of come to peace with it. And it came from actually when a company that I worked for, the owner came to me and said, I want to know how to write an email, but I don't want to see my inbox. I want to open a new email, but I cannot see the list of things people have emailed me because I will get lost in it. And so I found that little things like that, which are totally silly. You can scroll up or down and see them. You're not really stopping yourself from doing anything, but just having that diligence helps to compartmentalize things and let you have focus. Because a lot of times it's, the other things really just aren't relevant to the task that you're doing. And it's just a matter of being able to, single-mindedly focus on any given thing. So. Yeah,
I think that compartmentalizing is, that is such a different kind of topic related to this as well. And it just reminds me that for me is a talent that I think I do have. I'm totally able to compartmentalize. And I remember my mom used to say that there could be a fire in the room and I wouldn't notice because I was too focused on whatever it is I was working on at that moment, or whatever it is that I cared about. Maybe it was a video game or a new action figure or whatever as a child. But, and so I think, that it's both been a blessing from that standpoint of what you just said. Like what you just said, I couldn't relate to at all. The idea of having to not see my emails. It's like, if I don't want to pay attention to my emails, no problem. I just decide not to do it and I don't, right? But the problem, the flip side of it is sometimes there could be something on fire and I totally miss it because I've compartmentalized it out of my head. Well, we've got on we've probably gone way far away from that topic, but you can tell I was passionate. I have a lot of thoughts about these things.
It's a good topic, and it's one that I like you said, it's one that I take personally and I think truly affects me. And so, I think it's a good topic to talk about.
All right. Thanks for watching the None of Our Businesses podcast roundtable. Stop back next week. We'll have some more articles to discuss with the crew. If you'd like, smash the like button, hit the subscribe, ring the bell. If you want to watch previous episodes, maybe they're up here, maybe they're down below, maybe they're recommended. I don't know. But give them a try. Thanks so much for your support. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.